Today I wanted to take a couple minutes and show you some things I made out of metal on my off-road vehicle here. And when I was a kid I had a dirt bike, and then in college I had a dirt bike, and then I left the industry for around 20 years, and then about 5 years ago I got back in the power sport industry, saved some money up, and we've had a lot of fun with this RZR we picked up. We take it on the dunes as a family, or some off-road trails as a family. Last summer I took all the family on it, like extended family and everything, and it was a lot of fun. So one thing I do to save money on this, because if I was to purchase every accessory on this, it would easily double the cost, is I try to make some of my own stuff. So I just want to walk you around, show you some of the things I've made for this, try to inspire you for your own creations on maybe your Jeeps or your off-road vehicles, and things like that. It's a little windy today. I can hear a train in the background, so hopefully you'll be able to hear what I'm saying as I walk this around. One of the first things I wanted to show you is this front receiver I made. So I took this piece of plastic off, and behind that I have a mount that I welded this piece of square tubing on, and then I cut the piece of plastic. I was pretty proud of myself. I cut it pretty accurate there, so then I was able to put the piece of plastic back on. But I have this front receiver on here for two reasons, really. One reason is so I can put this ball on the front, and then I hook a hitch on here so I can tow this behind my truck into Silver Lake. So I just have a coupler that I unhook, and then that way I can really quickly disconnect this from the tow vehicle. It only takes like 15 seconds, and then I can go out on the dunes. The other reason I have this front receiver is for my winch. So I'm going to show you that. So now I have the winch mounted into my receiver, and I just really like this setup. So if I'm out in the woods and I decide I need the winch, I just slip it in here, and this winch I can put on the front of the vehicle or the back of the vehicle. So I had to fabricate some of these holders for the winch, because the winch didn't come with that option to move it from the front of the vehicle or the back of the vehicle. So I had to kind of make some fabrication there to allow that, but it's really handy to be able to put the winch in the front. Sometimes you want a winch out of a situation from the front, and sometimes you want a winch from the back. So I can easily move that winch from the front of the RZR. I can take it, and then I can move it back here, and then I can just mount it right in this receiver, and then it could be in the back. Because a lot of times you get into a really deep mud hole, it's actually easier to just winch out of the back than the front. So this is where my winch hangs out when it is not hooked onto the RZR on the front or the back. It goes in this holder. So this was something I had to fabricate. It's kind of a custom bend there. I welded another piece of square tubing on there, and I had to hit some supports underneath, because otherwise this would wobble and it'd crack my plastic probably. So I'm going to put the winch in here so you can see what it looks like when it's in the storage position. Now here's the winch now in the storage position. So this is how it rides most of the time when I'm out adventuring. I have this pin that I put in here so that way it can't be stolen off the RZR, because I leave this parked outside at night at the campground and stuff. So I just have this locking pin that I put in there, and then to kind of protect it from some mud, I put this cover over it. So the cover helps protect it from some mud, and it looks a little better as well with the cover on. I really like this setup. It rides really nice back there. It does shake a little until I get the pin in, and I put a bungee cord over this bag just to help hold it. But I actually use this. I've used this winch on my tractor several times. I've yet to actually use it on the RZR. I've taken this unit out, and I've moved machines around in my barn, and it's really nice to be able to remove that winch. So that was kind of my winch situation. Part I want to show you here is the spare tire mount. So this spare tire mount, to buy one of these is really pricey. I mean, close to 200 bucks or more for some of these. So all I did is take a steel plate, and I welded on some bolts, 4 bolts, so I could put the lug nuts on the other side. And then I took a piece of pipe, I cut the piece of pipe in half, and I welded these tabs on, and I just put some protective material on there so that way it wouldn't gouge the RZR. And and then I bolted that on, and then I put these 2 set bolts on there. That just helps to keep it from moving. So I used a tap in there to tap these bolts, and that just kind of helps keep this from bouncing around. But I really like this spare tire mount. But some of them you see take up a ton of space. You can't get in the back or anything, so I can still access that cargo mount. And then over here is where I have my lug nuts that I can take off to get the tire off if I need it. So I do a lot of riding by myself, so I really want to have a spare tire handy. Another thing I need when I'm out riding by myself is I like these off-road jacks. So this is an off-road jack that I use to get out of some deep mud or to lift the vehicle to change a tire. And what I made on here is I made these brackets. So there's a little cotter pin that comes out. This is a clevis pin that I had that I just welded on. So this is real similar to my situation on my spare tire mount. I just cut a pipe again. I put these little rubber grommets on there just to help keep things from jiggling around. But there's 2. There's one here and there's one over there that mounts this off-road jack out of the way while I'm cruising down the trails. Now, one thing that I did to make this a little bit better for the softer material, and I'll walk around to the other side to show you, on the back of this seat I mounted a big flat chunk of metal here that I'm going to have to move the seat a little. Alright, so this piece of metal I just have on there with a couple wing nuts, and that's what would help support the jack on the ground so it doesn't sink deep into the mud. So I can just put that right down on where the jack would be, and that makes it really nice. So that just hangs out behind my seat. You would never know it was there, but it makes a lot more surface area for the jack. I'm going to walk back over here. I didn't make this out of metal, but this is another feature that I have. This mounts the spare belt behind the back seat. So this is just made out of some plastic, and it just hangs out there with my spare belt behind the seat, and you can kind of see like it stays really clean back there. There's just a tiny bit of mud getting on it, but it really stays clean, and it's always there right behind my back seat, which is super handy. Another thing I made was this fire extinguisher holder. Unfortunately, a lot of these razors tend to catch on fire for various reasons, so fire extinguisher becomes pretty important. So this thing, it just sits in this holder, so I can actually grab it out of the holder when I'm still in the driver's seat if I needed to. But the holder is really simple. It's just a couple steel rings that have been welded together, and then the same kind of clamp that I've been making, just a piece of pipe cut in half with some brackets on there to weld it. So it just rides around in here. It doesn't fall out at all. Some people would have guessed that would have fallen out, but it just stays in there. It does scratch the fire extinguisher a little bit, but my passengers could grab it, and or I could grab it. Another thing I want to show you is, in case of an emergency, they make these knives, and these will cut your seatbelt. So if you get stuck in your vehicle, you want to get out if it starts to catch on fire, so you can just cut the seat belts really quick. So I have these positioned to where my passengers can grab them if they need to in a hurry. So one of the problems with these razors is storage, trying to find storage situations. So these are some things I made out of metal too, a couple more metal rings, and the same type of clamp I've been using. And this just unscrews, and it's just a PVC pipe. This is for bigger wastewater, and I have my supplies in there. So you can put each one of these tubes, I have 2 tubes, each one of these is the same amount that I would have in my glove box. So pretty handy how much stuff you can store in there. So that's basically what I've made on this razor. I'd really like to do a front bumper someday maybe, and I want to do some rock guards maybe, because it's a kind of long, and once in a while you high center. Not as bad as I would have guessed, but once in a while. And then I'd really like to maybe make some type of, I don't know, the back doesn't really need it as much because it has a roll gauge for a bumper. But there's some of my my little add-ons that I really like, and they've been a lot of fun. So the only other thing I can think of right offhand is I took off these panels and I put an extra layer of filtration in there so you don't get as much sand in there for the dunes. But otherwise, this thing's pretty much stock. I haven't monkeyed with electronics as much as I did when I had a Polaris Ace that I went through it, and I monkeyed a lot with some electronics and different things. But this one is, other than what I showed you, is pretty much stock. So there you have it. There's some ways that you can incorporate some of your metal creativity into your vehicles.